and welcome. I am Alero Edu, and I wish you a happy Easter indeed. Well, even though it's not officially Easter yet.
It is Easter, please. It is Easter.
Well, it's Easter season.
It's Easter. Good morning, I'm Ayo Makine. It's Easter.
Not fight.
I'm just saying, it's Easter. It's Easter. Someone else is telling me it's not Easter, that tomorrow is Easter. It's the weekend Easter.
No, he has not risen yet.
Wait, when the federal government of Nigeria was granting holiday, what did they say the holiday was? Oh, all of a sudden you're quiet.
Yeah, welcome to something.
Okay, it's Easter season. It was Good Friday yesterday. What do we call this one? Today is Holy Saturday, and tomorrow is Easter Sunday,
yes.
And the day after is Easter Monday.
He's still on the cross.
Now?
Yes.
Now? No.
No. He's in the tomb. Okay.
Vicar?
He's in the
Another
tomb.
query.
Yes. He's in the tomb. Yeah. Oh yeah, did you see the post last week? And somebody said, the time has come. All of you, learn how to spell risen. I don't want to see R-A-I-S-A-N, R-A-I-S-O-N. Learn how to spell risen. It's R-I-S-E-N. The various spellings of, that people write for risen. I had such a good laugh. And I said, oh yeah, this is the season.
Oh,
you receive all kinds tomorrow.
All kinds. And it starts now. It starts now.
He is raising.
The R-E-A-S-O-N, R-I-S-E-N, and all kinds of other. Christ. I don't know. I don't even know where. Can we pick on something else? Okay, so it's the weekend of Easter. One of the things that a number of people are talking about concerning this Easter season, if you would recall, is that the normal hustle and bustle, the feeling of the season, the fervency with which people expect the season isn't there. There are those who are questioning, is it the cost of living that is the reason? Is it the cost of transportation? Is it the cost of getting anything done? Or is it just the entire mood of the nation that is making people to celebrate the season the way we normally would back in time?
It's quite low key, and
it's been low key for a good number of years.
Yeah, and this year in particular, you go to the market. Normally people will be hustling to buy chicken and all that now, but you don't see all that activity because everything is beyond most people's reach.
And that most certainly.
Inflation is dealing with Nigerians.
And, just yesterday we also heard that inflation, figures have risen because of the rise in the price of food items and gas, and among a number of other things. But, I don't even know where to begin with that one.
And talking about inflation, I'm sure you didn't miss the news item yesterday, or was it 2 days ago, that airlines were going to be charging dollars for tickets.
Thankfully, they have rescinded that decision.
I was sure that government wouldn't even allow them to do that in Nigeria. But we can't be spending naira in an economy that spends naira, and then you're expecting to do your business in another currency.
Well, fine, that's understood.
Yeah.
But there are so many other things denominated in that currency here, because in the name of it's a global product. Gas is denominated in dollars.
Stuff like
Petroleum products.
Crude oil.
Crude oil.
Well, that's understandable.
Why is it understandable? It's made in Nigeria.
It's not on the shelf for you to go buy like an air ticket is. You want to go to London, you have to go look for dollars because you want to go to...
I want to buy gas. I have to buy in...
No, you're not buying gas.
Wait.
The gas you buy, you're paying naira for.
Wait now. I want to buy gas, right? In naira. And I have to buy gas in the naira equivalent of the dollar.
So charge us the naira equivalent of your ticket.
Exactly. Which will be more expensive, by the way.
Obviously.
Okay.
But government agreeing to that is killing the naira.
Has government agreed to it? I don't know. Well, you know, that's not. Are we flying
Government
tomorrow?
is not here.
But we are the government, so please don't forget that one. We are the government. So, and we are recruiting another set of people in the year ahead, in February next year. So, what you looking for?
You're recruiting. Oh, this interesting tweet. Reno Omokri says, Dear General Buhari, you just pardoned Darie and Yame, who stole billions. You're also rehabilitating repentant Boko Haramists. Yet you are prosecuting Kanu, Igboho, and Sheikh Zakzaki. How can you forgive thieves and killers only to pursue freedom fighters?
That's a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I read it is a question.
Well, I guess we'll wait for the presidency
to respond to that. And we shall be glad to read the response.
Will they also be responding via a tweet?
Possibly.
Okay.
One tweet deserves another.
I'm talking about, you know, freedom fighters and all of that. That unfortunate occurrence in gun attack in Imo State is definitely troubling, especially when it is a deliberate, direct attack on the electoral process.
And on poor INEC staff who are just doing their job. And I don't know if you listened to some of the things that were said. We say we don't want election. So if you say you don't want an election, are the foot soldiers the ones you should kill because you don't want an election?
When we raised this issue yesterday, there was a question that I put to one of our guests. And it was something attributed to, well, it's from a statement that the presidency released when they said that you can't, well, paraphrasing, I said, you can't want peace, or, you know, you can't kill people and destroy things that you already have in the quest for power. And that resonated something on my own mind that, okay, so we know the people that are, it's like, well, government has always said that, you know, they know the people that are behind these things. The question
and they keep threatening to name names.
Why they don't do it. This is the quote. Let me read it directly. People don't have to destroy what is there in a desperate quest to get power. It's a statement from the presidency signed by Garba Shehu, the president's SSA Media and Publicity. So it means that we know who these people are.
My point is, we have been threatening to name names forever. And people are being killed every single day. Every day, the headline is, so many killed here, so many killed there. And we want this to be part of our normal life. We should accept this and live with it.
God forbid. Sincerely, Alero, God forbid.
We should.
God forbid. That's one thing.
Name those who are behind this thing, prosecute them, and do the needful.
Well, there are a good number of people who will say it's a catch-22. The question of how we get this thing done is another thing, because don't forget, every election year over the past 4 election cycles, we've heard it said over and over again that there may be no election, you know, there may be no general election. There may be no general election.
Well, at the rate we're going now with all these killings.
2 major religious leaders have said they're not sure that we'll have elections next year. INEC has said the same thing. You remember the Sultan of Sokoto saying, look, at this rate of the insecurity, we may not have elections.
Yeah.
Pastor
But
Adeboye,
nobody is going to come out to vote.
Exactly. Pastor Adeboye, one of the most respected clerics in Nigeria, is saying, I'm not sure. Not that there will be, I'm not sure if there will be no election in 2023. The INEC chairman has also said our electoral process is in jeopardy. And then there is an attack on an INEC staff. So where are we going? We can only hope that, you know, government knows what is happening and knows what to do to ensure this is done, because if we do not get already, there is a high level of voter apathy.
And then all this is going on.
And then all this is happening. There's been a gradual decrease in the percentage of voters that come out to vote over the years.
How are you going to get people to come out to vote next year when INEC staff is being shot point blank? And then you want us to go and vote?
And the people
we'll probably be shot as well.
So it's a whole lot of work, but we just can only pray and hope.
and this is us who've been screaming on this program, go out and get your PVC. Your vote is going to count. The electoral amendment, blah, 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 blah.
And then...
What are we going to say now?
It's an attack on the process.
Get your PVC and be killed because you want to go and vote? That is assuming that there is an election in the first place.
Okay, let's just hope that...
Now, this is very disheartening. I mean, at the rate at which people are being killed and, that train thing. Did you see the families of the missing people crying and asking government to do something to get our loved ones back?
It's a lot of
things. Tell us who did this and deal with them.
And even the ones that have been labeled or suspected. What are we, for instance, part of our menu this morning, starting with the first topic. There's been this talk around the Osinachi case.
Yes.
And the first topic we have this morning is...
The murder of...
Well, the death of. There is no... So, support for spousal abuse survivors. That's the first thing here. It's a chain of conversations. So... that's our first topic this morning.
Yes, and the second one is what is special about Easter?
Oh, what is special about Easter? Okay, so the next... Rebuilding livelihoods in Borno. This is a long-time coming topic. How far so far?
And then the Nigeria Football Fund.
About time.
Yippee!
About time. And then we're going to have the Artist of the Week. He or she or a shim?
She is a she.
She is a she.
She is a she.
Not a shim.
She is a she.
Okay. No, it is a she.
She is a she.
Okay. It's not fight.
Excuse me.
You are excused. We'll be right back after now. I don't know what's appropriate for this morning. Is it cocoa or cocoa? It's good. It's Holy Saturday. What do you take on Holy Saturday?
Cocoa. We're still fasting.
Oh, yeah.
So cocoa would be in order.
Cocoa. Go and get your cocoa this morning. And it's differently prepared from ugi. So just so you know.
Is it?
Oh, yes, it is.
Anyway, thank you for staying with us. We're talking support for spousal abuse survivors this morning. And you would wonder why we're talking about this at this particular time. If you recall, during COVID, we discussed something to do with this, and it came out that because people were forced to stay at home more, there was more abuse going on because spouses were not used to staying together, and because of COVID, they were now forced to stay together. Many of them didn't even know each other. Well, they didn't realize that they didn't know each other until COVID came along.
Or that they had evolved as much as they have. In fact, I think the police also mentioned it. I think it was in March of 2020. The police, Frank Kumba mentioned it. Look, when we told him that, we were hearing these cases of, domestic abuse, he said, we are just starting. I was shocked. I said, we're just starting. Because, people who were not staying together before will now be compelled to stay together. And it was a global phenomenon. A lot of divorce cases came, a lot of separation cases came because...
And a lot of babies came along.
Well, we're talking about domestic violence now, not domestic expansion. So that happened a lot. So it was because people were compelled to face the issues they'd been trying to avoid over time.
Yeah. And domestic violence is also called dating violence, intimate partner abuse, spousal abuse, intimate partner violence, and domestic abuse. And it takes place in many forms. It strikes couples of all races, religion, socio-economic status, and sexual orientations. Now we have a panel this morning to help us look at this, and it's my pleasure to welcome Mrs. Atinuke Odukoya, who is the Director, Center for Women's Health and Information.
Good morning.
Morning.
Nice to be.
Sitting right next to her is Dr. Jibril Abdul Malik, consultant psychiatrist and founder and CEO, Asido Foundation.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
And on this side of the divide, we have Antonia Ojenagmo, Sexual and Gender-Based Violence, SGBV advocate. Thank you very much for coming this morning.
You're welcome.
Let me start with you, madam. Why is it that this particular problem is now coming into focus? Is it that it is new in our society? Why this spotlight on it?
Okay, so the spotlight on it is because a lot of awareness and sensitization is going on, and also because people are getting a bit bolder and able to come out of their domestic private spaces to speak out about the things that are going on. It's also saddening that a lot more harm is being done at this time. So more people are dropping dead, more people are getting hospitalized, and then there's this media spotlight to it. There's several activities that are going on within the communities among CSOs and other groups that is also putting a spotlight on issues of gender-based violence in general, and then domestic violence or intimate partner violence as one of the forms of gender-based violence within our communities. So that is making people speak more, come out more, and a lot more people are now able to talk about these things. You know, it's something that we used to be ashamed of. People will cower behind their doors and their windows to protect and keep what's going on. And then we can't take away the Sorosoke generation. You know, this group of young people that will speak out no matter what. They're tired of hiding, they're tired of pretense, they're tired of the hypocrisy, and they're just out there. Mommy, if you won't talk, I'm going to tell somebody. Mommy, if you will not do something about this, I will do something. So they are speaking. And, you know, the society is just seeing something that we've tried to hide for so long. Like I say to myself, we've played the ostrich for too long. And now the chicken has come to roost. So that's where we are at this time.
Dr. Abdul Malik, when we think about this kind of violence, most of the time we think about the men beating the women. But the women have their own whip with which they beat the men as well, which is their mouths.
Absolutely.
But somehow, no one talks about that. How much do you see in your practice of men who have been abused, as in not physically, but with words, you know, verbal abuse from women?
Right. Thank you very much. This is also very common. You know, in terms of gender, we have differences by gender. And as a rule of the thumb, of course, not a general, it doesn't apply to everybody, but as a rule of the thumb, generally, women are better communicators in terms of verbal communication, generally, than men. And so if you then have a situation where you have a relationship with someone who gets very easily frustrated and who has a low frustration threshold, has anger management issues, and is not able to communicate as clearly as the other individual, that is a recipe for lashing out, and violence ensues. So when we talk about abuse generally, there is emotional abuse, and emotional abuse can include verbally insulting, denigrating remarks. It's all forms of abuse. So abuse is not just physical or sexual. There is also emotional or verbal abuse, which can also be equally damaging, even though it doesn't leave physical scars. So all forms of abuse are condemned, right? But the reason why, what we know, the facts show that the majority of abuses that go on, the perpetrators are male. And the ones that have lethal consequences most of the time will be physical or sexual assault. And the major gender on the receiving end of that are commonly females. In fact, we do not have reliable statistics for Nigeria, but in the UK, there's a femicide census, which is a census of number of women being killed. And they published a 10-year report in 2020 and showed that every 3 days, a female in the UK, a female dies from assault. Usually
3 days?
Every 3 days. And the WHO also reports very worrying figures that if you look at the lifetime from the time we are born to the time we die, for females, 1 in 3 females, so there are 3 females on this panel now, according to WHO statistics, 1 out of every 3 would have suffered assault at some point in time during their lifetime. So these statistics, figures don't lie. Well, you can play with statistics, but generally speaking, the figures globally reveal that there is a lot of assaults and that females are generally at the receiving end. That's not to exclude the fact that in some instances, in some relations, males are at the receiving end of abuse. It may commonly be verbal abuse, as you rightly said, but sometimes even physical abuse also. Just that, but that will even be...
But that's rare.
But it occurs.
But it's rare.
But even when it occurs,
the numbers would be a lot smaller.
True.
Maybe like 1 out of 10. I'm just saying.
Yes, the numbers are small actually. So the numbers are really small. But even when it occurs, no man will be confident enough to come and say.
Hence the reason the data is not available.
On that reporting, yes. So that's the situation.
Is this peculiar? Sorry, just a quick follow. Is it peculiar? Has any research been able to say why?
Oh yes, why the gender difference or why this occurs?
Why this occurs?
Right. Oh, there are some reasons. It's a multifaceted problem. It's not a one causative factor. And it starts from the family, upbringing, the grooming of the child. We know in our society here in Nigeria, for instance, that males are allowed to play football, boys will be boys, but the female children say, come and assist in the kitchen, so that when you go to your husband's house, you must know how to do this. And so there's a lot of emphasis on grooming the female child.
Does that still happen?
Of course. There is more indulgence of the male child. So if you then rear up, so when you have perpetrators today, they were reared yesterday. And the ones that will be perpetrators tomorrow are being reared today. Wow. So we have to look at that family unit. That's the beginning, where you then have a sense of entitlement that everybody should be at my beck and call. I should have my way all the time. And where that doesn't happen, I can take action. That's one. The second reason is if you grow up in a home where you witness violence from the father to the mother or to anyone who opposes them as the means of resolving conflict, you grow up accepting that as the norm. So all of these are things you witness in the home. You then look at the culture and the society where you live, and there's a lot of stigma and shame associated more with females who are unmarried or females who are divorced. They are seen as sort of failures, because they say you are not able to keep your family. But there is no such equivalence accorded to the male who is divorced or who is unmarried. And so rather you have appeals, try and get married now, and what is the problem? But for a female, it will be assumed that, oh, she doesn't have good character, she doesn't have integrity, that's why no man has married her till date. So these are subtle things that perpetuate it. So we also have, even our religious clergy also have a role to play, because when you have violence in a relationship or in a marriage, you tend to hear, be patient, pray more, it will work out, and all of that, until unfortunately fatal consequences occur. And the last one is this: we, in our society, I'm a psychiatrist, and we have mental health professionals, we have psychologists, we have psychiatrists who can intervene, because some people have personality flaws. They are not necessarily bad people, but they have poor anger management.
We'll come to those character flaws, because those ones are also quite critical.
Yeah, so when people don't understand that there can be interventions, it also leads to the occurrence of this.
You know, my colleague was asking the other time about, you know, the different names that you give to these abuses. Then there is spousal abuse, intimate partner abuse, intimate partner violence. I didn't even know such names occurred. That such names existed for this kind of thing. It's bad. It's as simple as that. What's your take on all of these? This whole conversation, as Madam said earlier, started again because of a recent occurrence that we all know, the death of a famous gospel musician. So, in all of these, what have we missed as a society?
Advocates have been talking about this for a long time, but it didn't make a lot of sense. A lot of people didn't give a lot of attention to it because of the way we have been socialized. Now, like Mrs. Atinuke said, we used to hide this kind of violence because of the shame and the stigma that is attached. And from the religious point of view, you're also told to pray, you're also told to fast. You're not supposed to paint a bad picture about your family. You're supposed to project that beautiful image. No woman wants to come out to say, my husband is beating me. No man wants to be known as a wife beater. So we hide all of this. We pretend and we think that it doesn't matter. We have kept all of these for a very long time. You hear stories of men saying, my mother was being beaten, but my mother stayed. And a lot of these women give excuses and they say they're staying because of the children. Now they don't know the colossal damage they're doing to the children. For every time you stay in an abusive situation and the children keep seeing this form of abuse, the children, they are growing up and they are making decisions of them, decisions based on what they are seeing. We've seen ladies who have grown up to say, I would never tolerate any rubbish from any man. I grew up, my mom was not financially empowered, and the number one thing on my mind was I was going to be financially empowered, and I was never going to be a housewife because my mother was a housewife all through her life. And when my dad passed on, they had to distribute all the children among family members. So I grew up knowing that I would never be a housewife to any man. So we have a lot of people like that who are in the same situations, who have grown up seeing their parents, their mothers especially, being beaten, and the mothers stay because of them, and they're bottling up all of this. Now, these are childhood traumas that they need to heal from. Most of the time, when the men see that their mothers are being beaten, their mothers take it. They've grown up to know that, okay, this is a norm. A woman is supposed to take abuse. So they begin to beat their partners, you know. Some of them, the ladies begin to verbally abuse the partner, and the man begin to physically beat the partner. Now, if you are from a very religious background, you don't want anybody to know. Even if you mention it, you are going to be told you need to fast. Because one of the reasons that is being given is that God hates divorce. So that statement has done a lot of damage. And
I'm sorry, madam. You're going to continue because I have another question. God hates divorce, but He doesn't hate the divorcee.
No, He doesn't hate the divorcee.
That point ought to also be communicated. But in terms of the manifestation of this spousal abuse, in what ways does it manifest? Well, the doctor has talked about physically beating a spouse, verbally abusing a spouse, emotionally abusing a spouse, and I think he also talked about sexually abusing. In what ways do these things manifest, in their homes that makes these people? Okay, maybe let me ask it differently. I'm actually interested in the sexual violence part because I've heard people say that until they feel pain, in that department. They don't enjoy it. And so where do we draw the line between sexual violence and that sexual orientation?
That's a conditioning. They have been conditioned that way. If a girl is used to the fact that without pain, she doesn't enjoy sex, it's a conditioning from when she started having sex. And most of the time, it's because of what they see. It's because of what they have gone through. Like, I know people who, if they are not beaten, they don't enjoy sex. And when I had a one-on-one with them, it was because of the way they grew up. They saw their mother being beaten. I was telling you something as we were coming. Yeah. Yes. Someone is being beaten and the husband forcefully has sex with her. And she's being told if you don't give him willingly, he would take it by force anyway, after beating you. And the truth is, our children are seeing most of these things. And their minds are being conditioned that this is the norm. But it is not the norm, which is one of the advocacy we're doing now to say it is not the norm. Violence is not accepted in any form, be it sexual, be it verbal. There's also financial abuse.
I wonder why the doctor didn't mention that financial part.
There are several types of abuses that, sometimes just falls within the crack. I mean, the physical one, it's easy to see. The bruises, the black eye, and all of that. For me, one of the most critical forms of abuse, and again, women facing it the most. A research in 2018 says that 1 in 4 Nigerian women actually go through one form of abuse or the other. So he was talking about the UK data. It's just so we see how close the figures are. And the fact that during the COVID, it was even tagged as an endemic. It's that bad, the shadow pandemic. Emotional trauma that comes from all of these things has a way of perpetuating the gender-based violence that we see. You mentioned something when you started to speak about the different words that are used and how those words are used interchangeably. Within the domestic sphere, we have issues of incest, for instance. And how do people deal with incest? Not just when this Osinachi case came up. There was also something about a child there was incest in the family, and people were advising the mother, don't talk about it, don't go out there, don't embarrass the girl, don't disgrace your husband. There's another issue of the stepfather that had raped a daughter, and people are like, your husband has begged you, take your daughter out of the house before she becomes second madam, fight for your marriage, and it's our condition, and socialization is very strong. The way we are cultured, the way we have been wired to think through things, and I believe that at this point in time is the time when we need to rethink. Rethink. Yeah.
It is that rethinking that I think brought us to this topic that we're talking about today. But you haven't talked about that financial abuse.
Okay, so the financial
I'm very interested
abuse,
in that
yes,
one.
you need to be. So in terms of financial abuse, then for some people, you say, oh, my wife can't work. Okay, fine. For whatever reason. Provide for her. It's always about control, the power over.
Absolutely.
Always about control, the power over. In actual fact, abuse itself is about the power over. No man is going to, will you fight the bus conductor on the streets when he annoys you? You will caution yourself because you're not sure if he's going to batter you. But when it comes to this person, because so when a woman has no finances of hers and she has to come and plead and beg for everything, of course she can't do anything.
But it's the same thing
not
with the man.
Even with her children.
There are those who are watching us now and they're definitely going to come for us. And they're going to say, look, there are situations, doctor, you may have heard that as well, situations where it is the woman that is working, the man is not, is the house husband, they call it now?
Yeah.
I heard that before, so it's both ways, right?
So like doctor said earlier, the
ratio,
rate, the ratio is not there. Yes. And then again, we need to try and put things in proper perspectives. When I train and I'm talking to people, I say when you talk about a man that does not have resources, which is where you have most of the verbal abuse actually. when it's like she didn't drop money, Let's put this thing in perspective. So there's the issue of the man that is irresponsible, that squanders all the money, that is a drunk, that spends all the money outside there. There's that one. There's the issue of someone that is hardworking, he's not a lazy person. There's this unfortunate occurrence for a season, and there are no resources. Again, our socialization. That socialization that keeps saying that a man must provide everything. You hear people say, no, I cannot drop one kobo. My husband has to provide all. You see men getting angry and fighting over, my wife is the one that has the money now. And so I can, no, God forbid, I can't ask her for money. I would rather suffer. I would rather work. Because we've been socialized to believe that he should be able to provide everything. Absolutely fine. But when you don't have, is not enough reason for you to be emotionally battered and all of that.
It is because the man has not suffered enough.
Dr.
Abdulmalik, let me ask you this. And this sometimes these things are about the personality. You wanted to talk about some character flaws the other time. I don't know. Maybe there are other descriptions, but I have heard stories of a group of people called narcissists who have a specialty in frustrating, sucking the juice out of the life of their partners or anyone that is around them. How prevalent is that in this case that we're talking about?
Right, it's actually very prevalent, and I'm glad you mentioned this because the personality also comes into play, and Ms. Odukoya also mentioned that there is some sort of power play. For some individuals, it's about the trail and the power. You know what they say, that power intoxicates, and then absolute power intoxicates. So wherever, whether male or female, if you have more power, there is the tendency for that power to get to your head and for you to become an oppressor, in quote. And personality also comes into play here, because personality is your default disposition to behaving and to treating people. So those who are narcissists, they have an overinflated sense of self. They believe they are superior and better than everybody, and the world exists to serve them.
Even though they are very poor.
It doesn't matter whether they are poor. They believe that all of you do not know their true value. That's why you have not given them the wealth that is deserving to them. You know, so even if they are students, they do an exam, they score 20, other students scored 80, they say that examiner doesn't know anything, he doesn't appreciate my genius. So it's all about the mindset. So when you then have that kind of mindset in a relationship or in a marriage, it's a recipe for problems. There is going to be abuse. But it's not black or white. If they are fortunate and they marry someone with an opposite personality trait that we call dependent personality, who is ready to be the floor mat and do everything to worship the floor, then it will be perfect bliss. But where you
partnership
don't...
made in heaven.
Made in heaven. Both parties will be satisfied. But where you don't have that kind of matching personality, then there will be conflicts. And when there is conflict, he will want to then exert his dominion. And then you then have abuse, physical and all sorts, financial. And some of these individuals go to very, strategic extent to manipulate, to deceive, to achieve their end objectives. But even in this instance, if they have insight, if they are aware, some people grow up and then they begin to get feedback that you behave this way and it's unacceptable, and they may then say, how can I get better? Because I don't want us to go away, those watching and listening, go away with the impression of, oh, okay, if I have narcissistic trait, that's the way I am and that's it. That's not so. There is room for psychological intervention. You can learn to trim the edges, modify your behavior, and improve.
That is, if they come out to you.
Yes.
Because most of the time, those who do these things, they gaslight
They're not even aware.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and if they acknowledge,
Absolutely.
not necessarily not being aware, but if they acknowledge the fact that they are. Again, what happens here in our climb is that we've been, particularly men, have been socialized to be supermen. And they don't believe that there's anything wrong with them. So when someone is saying you need to see a psychotherapist, a psychologist, to name
Do
whatever.
you mean I'm
No,
mad?
but in this climb as well, that is
Absolutely.
not acceptable, because that means we're in
Do you mean
Exactly.
I'm mad?
The way
Do you
people
mean I don't
also
know what
see
I'm doing?
mental
seeing a
health.
therapist
Yeah.
in our climb is not like over there, where seeing a therapist is, I mean,
And
chats
then
for
because
every
our
day.
society has made a lot of women believe that you should be that floor mat, the doormat.
Yes,
and
yes.
you should be docile, and you should not speak out, and you
accept.
should just accept he's
Yeah.
your husband.
Yeah.
If he's done something wrong, okay, beg him. You people, you've begged, and then
He
you
has
would
done
go.
wrong, but you
you
beg.
see, and then women have learned over the years to take on the shame of their husbands. So someone, and I'll give an example of someone that is married to a drunk, for instance. He's drinking. He's sleeping around in the gutters. Madam, you are not a drunkard. You don't drink. You're not on the streets. Why are you the one that is ashamed? And those are part of the things that we've taken on as women in this part of the world. And so he comes in, he beats you blue-black. You're screaming. The neighbors have heard that you're screaming, so they know. In their minds, they've started again. But you still have that need to paint a picture of a perfect
Everything's
home.
okay.
Everything is fine. But you're dealing with a narcissist. And sometimes people don't even know. Sometimes people don't have that internal strength to even fight stuff. One of the things that I would like people to know is that setting boundaries sometimes helps. Because once you play the doormat, and for most of the time, we're all human, you get tired. You get worn out. And so one day you will kick back.
Yeah.
And then when you kick back, even to the entire world, it looks like, oh, what's wrong with her? Suddenly she has a bit of money now and she's growing wings. But that's not it. And if you've done it for so long, you then tend to want to hide in your space. And you don't want people to know.
Okay.
Now, Doctor, before we go to the support for those who have suffered abuse, quickly, let me take you on regarding something that she said earlier about the boy child who witnesses his father abusing his mother, and he grows into an abuser himself. But we have heard of cases of boy children who stand up to their fathers.
Right.
The day you touch my mother again, I'm going to kill you. So those kinds, what kind of adults do they grow up to be?
Thank you. Now, it's important to know that as human beings, we are neither white or black. We have different personalities. And if you expose 10 people to the same scenario, you cannot absolutely predict how the 10 will react. So we have those who will say, oh, okay, Eureka, so that's a way of solving problems. Beat the person to submission and you have your way. Some people will come to that conclusion. Some other children will say, my mom is a good woman. She takes good care of me. She doesn't deserve this. And daddy is being unfair. This is not right. And will then either step up to the father or grow up with the mindset that I must never repeat the mistakes that my dad did. And I'll also talk to my friends and ensure that in my circle, this doesn't happen. I don't want any other woman to suffer the way my mother suffered. So the different ways it pans out depends partly on the nature of the child and their interpretation and the conclusions they arrive at.
Okay. Now, Antonia, let's go to the support part now. You are a survivor. What kind of support did you get or was available to you at the time that you suffered abuse?
Okay, I need to make a correction. It wasn't domestic abuse.
Okay.
It wasn't domestic abuse. It was incest from my uncle.
Okay.
Okay, so
But it happened domestically, just say.
Yes, it did.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yes, it did. The first time I spoke out, I didn't speak for a long time because of the shame and the stigma that is attached to incest and rape in this part of the country. In this part of the world, I beg your pardon. You know, a girl is stigmatized for saying she was raped, and you're going to hear stuff like, nobody is going to marry you. Nobody wants to marry a girl that has been raped. And nobody talks about the man who rapes the girl. So I didn't speak up for a long time. But the first person I spoke to after I spoke up, she just listened to me and she gave me her shoulders to cry on, and I really cried that day. Now, in 2015, I had a mental health breakdown. I was admitted in a psychiatric, a mental health hospital. It was when I came back from there, after all the therapy and counseling I went through, it then occurred to me that, oh, you have a lot of adults like me who have gone through childhood traumas, who haven't healed, and we're suffering from the psychological effect, and it's affecting our lives as adults. So for instance, you see a 40-year-old lady, and when she's asked about her childhood trauma, she breaks down and she begins to cry. It's not the 40-year-old who is crying. It's that 12-year-old child inside of her that was abused. It's that inner child that is crying for help. So I just realized that, oh, with therapy and with counseling, you can live a normal life again. For a very religious person, I come from a very religious background, I thought that once you pray and you read your Bible, you're fine. So I never knew that going for therapy wasn't a sin as it was meant to be. And in 2015, when I spoke about my mental health issues, the stigmatization was very real. I was bullied and told to shut up. You don't come out to say you have mental health issues, which is one of the reasons a lot of people will not even want to go seek a therapist. Because once you say, I want to go and see a therapist, it's like you're mad, you know. But for people like us now, we've decided to be shameless, to say there's nothing shameful about you going to see a therapy. You would live a normal life again. Yes, you might not be able to heal totally and perfectly, but you will be able to live normally again, you know, move on with your life and all of that. So that is one of the reasons why we started this support group, to give counseling, to give help to people who don't want to speak out. So it's a safe space. No videos, no recordings are done.
Okay.
How do you get them to speak out?
Okay, so I speak out on social media, so people reach out.
Okay.
So, okay, for instance, now with the case of Osinachi now, a lot of people have been reaching out. You know, so like in Lagos State, we have what is called the mandated reporter. So you can report on behalf of the person who is being abused, and the Lagos State has a toll-free number that you can call. So, for instance, I put a post on something like that on my page, and I begin to get people come inbox, people are sending pictures of their faces, people are sending numbers, sending the addresses.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Antonia.
It's fine.
What's that number?
Okay, 080.
Okay. Go on, she'll catch
08,000.
08,000.
8,000.
Yes. 333. 333.
That's the Lagos State number for
Yes.
reporting.
Any form of gender-based violence.
Okay.
Yes, that's the number for Lagos State
DSV.
Domestic and Sexual Offences Response Agency.
Okay. The
DSV.
number again is 08,000
Yes.
333333.
Yes, that's the number.
Right.
That's the number. Yes.
Good.
So you can call that number now.
You can call the number now. Somebody would respond to you. If there's a case of violence, the person will get help. The person can be picked up. You don't have to drop your name or
So
anything.
what's the name of that agency again? Lagos State?
Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Offences Response Agency.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. We're still talking about this support.
support. Yes.
What role does society have? The immediate environment. What role do they have to play in this kind of situation? I mean, just as Madam said, they have started again. And that is, in fact, some will just bring video out and be their phones out and be recording, and that is it, and post it on social media just for fun. And that is it. In recent time, I've seen videos of men that using what we used to call layad.
Yes.
To beat their spouses. I saw only one video of a woman beating the man back
I saw it
in
yesterday.
public. So what role does society have to play in this, stopping that man in his tracks?
I think the first thing we need to realize now is that we have a problem in our heart. Okay. I want to use this Sinachi. I'm sorry. She passed. We're very sorry about that. I want to use her as an example. She's like the epitome of a good wife material. She looks like a very, if you see her picture, you see this is a very conservative girl, a good girl who is married, and she has listened to everything that she's been taught in church, how to keep your home and all of that. Now, What do we need to do as a society? We need to stop shaming people who are bold enough to say, I'm going through this. We need to stop stigmatizing women who are divorced or who are separated. If that girl had spoken up, I'm very sure a lot of churches would never have invited her again to minister in their church, because they would label her a divorcee or a separated woman. They would not allow her handle the mic to lead praise and worship. I can tell you that free of charge. One of the reasons why I'm sure she never said that. So we need to demystify all of this. If a woman comes out to say, okay, I'm going through domestic abuse, it doesn't make her less of a woman.
Okay. Madam, to you now. So that's one way. Do you think it's a good idea for members of the immediate community who notice such thing happening to go into that home and say, Mr. Man, stop it?
I actually think so. And I think that at this point, practically every Nigerian should be a psychosocial first aider, a psychological first aider. We've been doing that, training community members, people that are respected within this communities, irrespective of your field, in how to be a psychosocial or a psychological first aider. 3 things: look, listen, and link. Well,
But
talking,
you know that if you go to the neighbor's house, they're going to throw you out, don't you?
No, so
That is not your business.
Absolutely, but now the training is on how to approach. You're not there to tell them what they're doing is right or wrong, advice and all of that. One is we're letting people know, what does the law say? Lagos State has a mandatory reporting. People don't know. You can report on behalf of someone now, you know. So in terms of looking, you see what's happening. Usually you can only hide these things for so long. People will know, somebody will talk. And you don't need to delve into their affairs. You can report it anonymously. That's one. The second one is that a lot of people do have that around the area approach. Religious leader, mommy in church, you know, all the mommies, all the daddies. And what we're trying to do is to help people to understand, like she said, demystify it. Let's take the shame shroud out of it. And you're not a professional. All you need to do is link. One of the things we're seeing is that people then shy away from when you want to connect them to an institution. All right? So for me, it's not about always saying, leave this space. Some people need to leave like yesterday before they die in it. Some people, if you're married to a narcissist that will not go through therapy, that there's nothing you can do. Gaslighting and all, you probably would decide to be the doormat and just leave, or you want to have an exit plan. That's another category. But like Dr. Abdul Malik said, that some people actually can go through therapy, anger management classes, and all of that. And so we are promoting that and talking about the look, listen, and link.
Okay.
In listening also, we have a way of, we know what before you've said it. Or you're talking and I know, your husband, I said, no, that youth pastor, no, he can't be your husband. I mean, and then the people can't talk. So we're saying don't judge anyone, all right? Believe her story first. Believe his story first. If you can't do anything about it, connect to the right place.
Okay.
So
one other community that these things usually play out and people don't know is the workplace.
Oh, yeah.
A hitherto ebullient person begins to be quieter by the day at the workplace. And she won't talk. He won't talk. But the people in the environment can see that their productivity level is dropping. What does that person do, Dr. Malik? What does the organization do?
Right. Now, you've just opened another can of worms that exists in our society, which is that we do not have work-related mental health support. WHO defines health as a state of physical, mental, and social well-being. three components. So health sits on three legs: physical, mental, and social well-being. Most workplaces have health insurance that caters to physical health. They want to employ you, they ask you to do an x-ray, blood test, and so on, physical test. But there is no support for mental health or social health in the workplace. And that's...
We're not sure whether or not we are recruiting patients.
So that's even at the level of recruitment. But even when you then have staff, right? For instance, imagine in a workplace, these are things that happen routinely. A member of staff is bereaved. The son or daughter dies suddenly. The spouse dies suddenly. What is the policy of providing support? Most workplaces, I will tell you for free, have no such policy, nothing. Everybody just wings it. Oh, we'll go and visit the person. We'll go and say sorry. And all of that. There is what is called Employee Assistance Program, which provides psychological, emotional, social support for staff. And that is routine globally, but in Nigeria it's still very rudimentary, right? Because we do not appreciate these things. We only pay attention to physical health. So workplace, we need to train HR. Most organizations, once you hear HR, your heart will start racing. What did I do wrong?
It's natural.
But HR,
everywhere.
HR, yes, but you see increasingly, HR is supposed to provide support, help staff be more productive,
but you know,
identify
staff,
challenges.
The HR has to know before they can offer that kind of support.
Exactly.
Now, HR may not know because HR is not the one working directly with the staff who needs this support.
Yes, I'm saying that HR, part of the responsibilities of HR is to ensure that staff have access to this kind of support. Not wait until problems occur.
But don't forget that many of these people will not report it. That's my point.
Also because HR, I'm sorry to butt in, because HR in this part is seen as rubber stamp. And so many people don't see it.
When you make mistakes.
Yes, and they don't see it as I can go in there. How many HRs, even when you have a whistleblowing policy and you're being sexually harassed in the office and you go to the HR, once the person that is sexually harassing you is the boss, then what?
You don't blow the whistle.
So those things are there and those things are real.
Is that the reason that people who are victims of spousal abuse or domestic violence will not get support from the office?
They're not. How do I go to my office to say I'm being beaten up?
No, you won't beat. You won't be the one to say it, but your staff, your co-staff will know that.
Yeah, if someone knows, with the exception of if that organization or institution has a policy and then they are actually implementing the policy, because those are two things.
Okay.
But Mr.
Yes.
Go and blow the whistle on somebody who's being abused.
Yeah.
And then something happens, she's called out or something, and she was advised to go look for care. And then she's mad at you, her husband is mad at you because she hasn't even, she's in denial. She won't accept, that what is happening at home is wrong. And she knows that if her husband gets to know that anybody else knows, she's going to get a worse beating when she gets back home.
So that's a tough situation for people as adults, actually. And that's part of why a lot of women, nobody does nobody can do anything because if I don't give you permission to wade into my situation, I don't see how you're going to come in there to come and wade. Exactly. My understanding of what he's saying, and I'm taking it from that angle, I'm looking at issues of maybe like sexual harassment within the workplace. I'm looking
I'm looking at someone who is
abused at home.
Abused at home.
Okay, and then
productivity is low, dropping because of that, Doctor.
Yes, I think the solution to that is psychological first aid. It's a simple training. We all know we have first aid boxes in our home, in primary school and so on, but that's for cuts and bruises. There is something also developed by the WHO called psychological first aid. It is something that everybody should be able to do. You don't have to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And it's very easy to train. It's part of what we do. We do trainings on it as part of the activities of our organizations. Every workplace including HR, should try and train staff on psychological first aid. We should train staff on life support. If somebody slumps, how do you do first aid, revival, resuscitation?
Yes.
If you notice a member of staff that is having problems, how do you approach them? How do you talk to
We've
them?
run
That is
completely out
psychological
of
first
time,
aid.
but I need to take each person's last word on this in one sentence only. Doctor.
Spousal abuse, violence causes a lot of emotional harm and damage. It includes blaming self, depression, anxiety, and so on. They need professional help, and I'm very glad that you are very open about your experience and that you healed, but every other person out there needs that intervention.
Mrs. Odukoya.
All right, I would say that everyone needs to begin to look out for issues of violence, gender-based violence, including domestic violence, and that psychosocial or psychological first aid is a key. It's a major way of being able to reach people generally. And so I think that people should try and embrace that, and our religious bodies need to be a part of that.
And the organization is there to give support.
Yes.
Should anybody
need
require
any of that, absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Your closing statement.
Okay, my closing statement will be that, like I said before, we should try and demystify the way we treat people who have gone through any form of violence, especially domestic violence right now. We should stop shaming women who have left their homes because of domestic violence. We should stop blaming them. Then the church should also stop telling women to pray and fast for a man who is always beating them. The men need to get help. We have classes like anger management classes, self-discovery classes for those men. And I also want to let the women know that you are not a shame, you are not a disgrace for living an abusive home. I want you to know that you are valuable and you are loved. Thank you.
Thank you. Antonia Ojenamo, Sexual and Gender-Based Violence, SGBV advocate. We also had Dr. Jibril Abdul Malik, consultant psychiatrist and founder and CEO, Asido Foundation, as well as Atinuke Odukoya, Director, Center for Women's Health and Information. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for coming to throw
us.
more light on this, and I'm sure that we have taken away a lot from this discussion this morning.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sunrise will return in a moment. Make sure you stay with us for the Easter story.
Thanks for staying with us. That question, what is special about Easter? Let's get some answers from Venerable Israel Oyele, who is Archdeacon, Ikosi Archdeaconry, and Vicar, All Saints Anglican Church, Ikosi. Thanks for joining us this morning. As well as Bishop Humphrey Erumaka, who is presiding Bishop Word-Based Assembly, Lagos. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So let's begin with that question, Venerable. What is special about Easter?
Easter is very special because it's a celebration of life. Jesus rose from the dead, and victory over sin, over the world, over uncertainty, over death. So the atmosphere is an atmosphere of transformation, new life, and the assurance that those who belong to Christ dies no more. They were transformed from death to life. So it's very, very special. Without Easter, there is no Christianity. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 established that. And Paul said that if Christ has not risen from the dead, then our faith is in vain and our preaching is nothing. So Easter brought new life, victory, hope for the hopeless.
Bishop, same question.
Easter is a very special moment in anything called Christianity because we all sinned, came short of the glory of God. We couldn't access God. By the standard of God, without the level of purity he required from us, we couldn't access him. But Jesus came as a substitutive sacrifice to qualify us to meet with God. And one thing about Easter is the fact of resurrection. And the main fact of resurrection is that our righteousness in him cannot expire. And I will explain it this way. In the Old Testament, under the Old Covenant, the high priest will take a lamb and then you confess your sins into the animal. Then the animal is killed in your place, because without the shedding of blood there will be no remission for sin. Then once that animal is killed, you have obtained righteousness. Then that animal is buried, and after 1 year the animal is assumed to have completely decayed. And once the animal decays, your righteousness has expired. So people had to do this repetitively. So Jesus came as our substitutive sacrifice, was slain for us, he was buried. If he remained in the grave and decayed, our righteousness would have expired, just like the righteousness of people under the Old Covenant. 2 Corinthians 5:21. He that knew no sin was made sin, that we might become the righteousness of God in him. So as he was there in the grave, he is like a pot of our righteousness. He didn't decay. He didn't expire. He rose. That's why he became a living sacrifice and went to the heavenlies and sat at the altar of sacrifice and became our living sacrifice. And he is still there, permanent, not changing, not fading.
But, you know, at the core, there are those who ask, what is the central message of Easter? You have talked about, you know, righteousness, repentance, and so has the vicar. But what is at the core of that sacrifice that Jesus made? What's at the core of Easter? There are those who will say it's sacrifice, it's love, and all those things. For you, what is it that is at the core of that activity that Jesus
is multifaceted. It's not just something one can do with one sentence. It's multiple. In fact, it's what authenticates Christianity. Christianity today is authenticated by the fact that Jesus is the Son of God. And it was Easter that made that declaration by his resurrection. When he was crucified on the cross, passersby mocked him and said, if you are the Son of God, come down, be alive again. And then when he was about to die, he said to his Father, unto you I commit my spirit. Because he knew his Father is the only one that has the ability via the Holy Spirit to raise him from the dead. And eventually, when he rose from the dead, that sealed that fact that he is the Son of God. There are quite a lot of other religion that will argue he's not the Son of God, but nobody will argue that he is the only one that has the stature to have defeated death and is alive and well.
Venerable, there are those who have said that at the core of Easter is love, that sacrifice Jesus made is because of the essence of love. I'm going somewhere with that question. Do you agree with him?
Yes, to a very large extent, because he offered himself for the sacrifice of the sins of the whole world, generations to come. So that is a greatest love. And that was why in John chapter 13, he established a new commandment before his arrest. And the commandment was the commandment of love. He told the disciples, love one another. And taking that into consideration in our generation, the true essence of love is somehow missing. And that's why value for human life is not there. People they see it as part of the system to take other people's life. So the love that God has shown to us in the person of Jesus Christ cannot be overemphasized. And it is a living love. It is practicable. It is the love that cuts across the entire cosmos. So, I do agree.
Okay. Now, Bishop, there's a lot happening in our land now. A lot. How can we translate this message of Easter into maybe the beginnings of repairing things in our land? In what way can we apply the message of Easter to our daily lives in such a way that it will begin to improve things in our country?
Well, as far as we understand the message of Easter to be a message of forgiveness, to the point that somebody so loved you that he went extra mile for your well-being. The translation for us in the society is also learning to forgive one another. It's also for us to go extra mile to make sure that we consider the interests of the second party to ourselves. The message of Easter speaks about selflessness. That's what Jesus did, to the point that a man so loved his friends that he can give his life for them. So it also calls for sacrifice, even in terms of our national leaders, politicians, people who have and those who don't have. The message of Easter encourages that we become selfless. The greatest problem in Nigeria today, corruption is mentioned, but the greatest thing is greed. If we can find one man who wants to come on the stage and not demonstrate greed in any form or shape, be selfless, things will be better.
Where are you going to find that man, please?
Well, we are still searching.
Okay.
Let me, on that same issue, Bishop, I'm going to ask you and then possibly ask Venerable the same question. Earlier in the week, a statement came from the Office of the President. I'm looking for the exact quote from the Office of the President. Okay, the President said, and I quote, "Easter evokes in us the resilience of the human spirit, not to give up in the face of seemingly daunting challenges of life," which is why my colleague asked you how we can replicate those things. And he says, "I enjoin us therefore to live out the eternal words of Jesus Christ on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." Now, it's that latter part that I'm going on this. How can we, because, I mean, with all of the challenges, that my colleague referenced earlier, things going on, people have offended people, and you can see the person that has done this thing. And the President is enjoining us to be encouraged by the words of Jesus. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Well, that is the quickest way to forgive. The surest way to forgive is to assure yourself that this person is doing this thing not with the normal influence. But in reality, there are times that people know what they are doing. It's just like if somebody throws stones, if a madman throws stones at me, the quickest way I can forgive the madman is to know that he's under an influence. He's not the one actually exacting that. But my inner person will always tell me, he knows what he's doing. He knows what, as far as my inner person convinces me that this person knows what he's doing, the tendency to retaliate will always be there. So when Jesus was teaching us that as a principle of forgiveness, he was teaching it, he was making forgiveness simple to us, to always assume that all things are not being equal with the person that is offending you. But in our context, like what we have seen in our political atmosphere, it's not a matter of forgiveness. It's a matter of removing who does not know what he's doing. If anybody is there, because we elected anybody because the person should know what to do. So it's not a case of forgiveness, and if we can't, that's my take. We didn't put anybody there.
In other words, we can't forgive them because they know what they are doing.
If they don't know what they are doing, they should vacate.
In the context of scripture, gentlemen, in the context of scripture, the people who crucified Jesus knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
They knew they were crucifying him. They knew that that was the ultimate punishment in that colonial government.
Yeah.
No, following the scripture, the Bible said, because they were influenced by the devil. The devil thought that crucifying Jesus would bring an end to the issue. That's why the scripture now said, if he knew, he wouldn't have crucified.
Okay, so in that same context, do these people know what they are doing to people? The people who are committing all of the villainous acts in the different parts of the country. The man who looked at a fellow human being in Imo State and shot him. Does he know what he's doing?
What?
I think
He knows because he's doing it for a purpose.
Just as the people
He may have been under the influence of something or the
He's
other.
doing it for a purpose. Either he's going to be paid or not, he's doing it for a purpose. Jesus offered himself for the sacrifices of the whole world. For that purpose, to wipe away sins, he shed the blood. The blood now represents and put an end to human or material sacrifices. So in Christianity, we don't offer any other sacrifices than sacrifices of praise and thanksgiving, not any human sacrifice. Right? So it's either the people are doing it for a purpose. Now they have people. People are fronting for those who are killing. Right? The money they collected, some people collected the money on their behalf. They banked the money. They even used the money to gather more ammunitions. Right. There might be a purpose.
Okay.
Christ died for a purpose.
And Christ also died for these same people.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, very interesting.
Talking about they are not knowing what they are doing. The scripture tells us we know in part, we don't know in full. So most of the times, people's actions are influenced either by somebody who wants to achieve a purpose, but comes to them and induce them, entice them, and they are pursuing that purpose, not knowing the ultimate goal of the inducer. So, but that's why at some point when people realize that they are off tangent or that they're just being used, then they can jettison that cause.
Bishop, let me ask a difficult question of the two of you. I think I've seen in 1 Corinthians, 13 verse 7, love forgives all things. She's smiling. Why are you smiling? Now, how do we live that in today's Nigeria? Someone who you know this person did you evil deliberately, got you sacked from your place of work or robbed you of something valuable to you, and scripture counsels you to forgive.
Yes. Love forgives all things. And I stand by that scripture. And the simple explanation will help us. Forgiveness is simply giving up on an issue without an intention to revenge, either physically, verbally, or otherwise. It's just keep this issue to rest and move on. And because whatever somebody has done to you may not be reversed. In fact, as a matter of fact, nothing is settled in life. Everything is forgiven. If somebody comes here now and slaps anybody, you say, okay, let's resolve it. You can't return the pain of that slap. Even if the person slaps back, it doesn't make a change. So it's just for you to know that your next opportunity to move on is to forget it. And that's why, no matter what it is, if somebody kills your spouse, you take him to court, he's imprisoned for 12 years.
It doesn't bring back your
It doesn't bring back your spouse. And as far as you carry the weight of what had happened, you can't move on to your next level.
I'm going to ask a difficult question from Venerable in the light of something that is happening. We just finished a conversation on, what's it called, support for spousal abuse. I'm sure you listened to a bit of it. A number of people have pointed to the clergy, you know, people who are ministers of the gospel, so to speak, and saying sometimes they'll advise the people who are in this situation to forgive and move on, pray to God, fast, and all those things. And then it ends up where it ends up. Now, as
somebody dies.
As the bishop has said, I don't know if you want to, as I said, it's a little difficult. There are those who say, because God hates divorce, anyone who is in an abusive relationship, what does the person do?
Well, we don't preach divorce. We don't preach divorce. And when we want to talk about forgiveness, forgiveness is divine. God in you can make you to forgive whatever offense somebody might have offended you.
And the person continues to commit the same offense on me?
Oh, the person is expected to repent.
But he doesn't. And he keeps bashing me like I'm a punching bag every day.
No, he can't do that.
Well, he
Many
did
do.
I don't know if I can come in there.
Yes,
Jesus,
Look, I'm sure you are aware of
Okay,
the
yes.
gospel singer who
Definitely.
had just died.
Definitely. You know, at times, the issue between husband and wife is very sensitive. The other person is not alive now to defend herself. So, right. But the absence of God in relationship brings all this. Jesus Christ was asked, how many times my neighbor offend me before I forgive? Is this 7 times? And he said, no. Even if you, 70 times, even if you sit down with somebody from morning till evening, that shows if he cough, he will count it as an offense. So what that means is that there's no offense that should be held against someone. Like the bishop has said, you are tying somebody down if you don't forgive, and at the same time, you are harming yourself.
Down.
Okay,
Yeah.
Bishop.
Okay. 2 questions that accrued from what you said: the place of divorce and the place of forgiveness, and the person keeps doing the same thing. The thing about forgiveness is that I bear no grudge to offend, to revenge. But I have a leverage. I'm not God, I'm human. Not to put you in a position to do that which you've done before. For instance, I hired you as my accountant, and then you embezzled my money. I forgive you because I'm not taking you to court. There is nothing wrong for me to recover what you have put in the bank. I'm not taking you to court. I'm not slandering you. I'm not coming on national television to, demean you.
But the one spent remains.
But the money, I can get it back. Number two, I would not employ you as my accountant again to repeat the same thing. For you to come back to that position, you have to re-earn the trust.
And it could take a lifetime.
If you have an opportunity to do that, that I ask you to go in peace does not mean I've not forgiven you.
Okay. Bishop.
No, he has not answered the second one.
You are dancing around
The second
question.
question, the second question is the question of divorce.
Yes.
You see, when people's theology is wrong, their lifestyle will be wrong. There is nowhere in the Bible says that divorce cannot happen. It comes to a point that he says, if the unbelieving partner departs, let him depart. That departure, what is it?
Unbelieving.
Wait, and it is strategic because there comes a time. That's number one. The number two is when there is an issue, there are processes you follow to resolve an issue. And when that processes terminate, he says, consider the next person who has not agreed to the process of reconciliation as an unbeliever. Let him depart. For instance, a husband beats the wife, then you make peace, and then the person is not willing to abide by the peace process. One-on-one, the person didn't agree. The church intervened, the person didn't agree. What else? A court gives verdict, the person doesn't agree. What are you expected to do? Move on.
So you say that person has behaved like an unbeliever.
An unbeliever. So let him go.
But how do we treat an unbeliever?
Let him depart in peace. I will not kill you, and you will not kill me.
You an unbeliever. When you say somebody is a non-believer.
And let me say this, there is no place in the Bible says, okay, are we to say that divorcees will go to hell?
No, he said, I hate divorce, not I hate divorcee.
So in actual fact, that somebody divorced, there are circumstances where people the very basic principle of marriage is that two cannot work together except
they agree.
They agree. That's the very basic principle.
And they become one.
Yes. If they are not agreeing, they are not working to be one. One is heading south, one is heading north. So as far as they don't agree, also, you see, our natural laws, in fact, constitutional laws or whatever, originated from the Bible. So you will find that there are things that orchestrate divorce. Abandonment. You can't say you are married to me and you choose to live
the way you like
in New York all your life, and I'm here. The essence of marriage is companionship. The essence of marriage is not being fulfilled. And I'm not sure what you're doing in New York. And you kept me here in bondage. So
if you have a parishioner, for instance, who comes to you on a fairly regular basis and shows you wounds and bruises from beatings received from spouse at home, what would be your advice to that person?
Of course, taking the person through the scripture, that Jesus has given us a place of the grace to forgive. Of course, there are bruises, there are this, there are that. But I will not advocate divorce between them.
Would you advocate separation for the protection of life?
Protection of life. Protection of life.
So you would say they can separate in the meantime?
So they can, because there are people who brought them together. Couples are expected to have counselors of course, you have premarital counseling and postmarital counseling. And that is the areas where two cannot agree, that you need the third person, and we advocate the pastors to be the third person in their marriage, where you just want somebody to hear you out.
Okay. Yes, Bishop.
Without any shred of doubt or, masquerading the fact, once there is constant threat to life, I will advocate, whether you call it separation or you call it divorce. In fact, I will advise divorce, because divorce is when the papers are perfected for the other party to marry. There is no marriage in heaven.
Not at all.
But what if there is such a situation, Bishop, where, okay, they separate for a few months or maybe a year or two, and then they are able to resolve the issues and come back?
It's okay. In fact, the reason why God says separate is because he knew that the biological factors will attract them to come back together. That's why he says that. But some marriages are already dead. Those factors cannot even kick in. So once he gets to that point, some have been pressed to the point that they have been rescued. I know a lady, the husband got offended because he's in the paramilitary operation profession. He pulled the gun. It's just that people rushed and held his hand, and then the gun released in the air. What if the lady had died? There is no marriage in heaven. If anybody that dies has died. And the issue of, when you preach to people, God hates divorce, then you tell them, if you divorce, you go to hell. You are actually not making them understand what salvation is. Our salvation is not based on staying and dying in marriage. It's rather predicated on John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not die in hell, but will have everlasting life in heaven. So it's not whosoever stayed and died in a marriage.
Well, your last words before we go.
Yes, there's still room for reconciliation. Yes.
With God and with man.
Yeah. Okay. And we have seen couples like that where they were told, okay, go for a while, go and be meditating and in the course of that meditation, people are counseling them.
Okay.
And then they came back.
Well, this conversation was about what is special about Easter. I guess it's an all-encompassing conversation. Venerable Israel Oyele, Archdeacon Ikosi, Archdeacon Ray, and Vicar All Saints Anglican Church Ikosi. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
As well as Bishop Humphrey Rumaka, presiding Bishop, Word-Based Assembly in Lagos. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now that you know what Easter is about, have a wonderful celebration. We're back after now for another topic. Stay with us. Okay, so it's time to play football.
No, we're not playing football. We're raising money for football.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Is that, when you say you raise money, it's like you're in church, you want to offering time.
Tithe. It's tithe, so that we can play football. Sometimes I think this boy actually laces his cocoa.
Oh, no, my Omo lady.
We're talking the football fund. The Nigerian Football Fund, TNFF, is an open-ended SEC-registered unit trust / mutual fund with an initial public offering to raise 5 billion through the issuance of 5 billion units of ₦1 per unit. Now, what does all that mean? It just means they want to raise money to help in the football, should I call it industry?
Football economy.
Football economy. Yes.
I'm sure
And
you've not heard
actually
that before.
make that a whole business on its own, so that football management, playing football, is not just Jekuredi business. It's a business.
Yes, not just playing sets under the bridge. You didn't play
Playing
sets.
5 aside.
No, 3 aside.
Oh,
What are you talking?
Okay,
With monkey post.
And shoes as goalposts.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. So we have two gentlemen here who are going to tell us more about this. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Nelson Ine, Executive Director, GTI Asset Management and Trust Limited. Good morning.
Good morning, Alero. Good morning.
We also have Mr. Tunji Karim, Fund Manager at GTI Asset Management Limited. Good morning.
Madam. Good morning.
And thank you very much for joining us. What exactly is this all about? You want to sell us some shares or whatever, what do you call it?
Financial
Instrument,
yeah.
for us to buy so that you can raise money for football.
Yes, and for the sports
Explain it better to us, please.
Okay, the Nigerian Football Fund is targeted towards raising funds to intervene in the sports business, in football, and by extension, the sports sector. So meaning that once this fund is raised, apart from us just developing the football, other sports can also access the fund. And the initial offering is 5 billion, but our expectations is far, far beyond 5 billion because it's an open-ended fund. So we expect that we are going to be focusing on the sports business and not on the other aspect of it, because sports is big business all over the world, as we can see, as is happening in other developed climes. Sports is big business, and that is what we are trying to achieve with this fund.
What role, Mr. Kazim, would this fund be, Mr. Karim, apologies, be playing in our sports development? Is this strictly football, or is it sports, as he mentioned?
Okay, thank you so much. The fund is not actually meant for football alone. It is for the entire sport. But we have a entry strategy that I call it, because every nation has the sports they embrace that is popular with them. So in Nigeria here, I think football is more popular, and that is why we have used that name as an entry strategy. Okay. And it's going to serve the football and other sporting
So strictly
activities.
speaking, it's a sports fund?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So what other sports do you have in mind that may come in later?
All sports that Nigeria are participating in.
Athletics.
You have, yes, basketball, table tennis, lawn tennis, all sports events, golf, everything.
You just tantalized someone here by mentioning tennis at all. Now, how can, is someone exposed? How can people be a part of this, Mr. Ine?
Yes, actually what we expect is Nigerians to participate by subscribing for this fund. And like I said, it's actually an investment fund. It's not donation, it's not grant. And we expect that once you invest in this fund, our target is the sports business. And if you look at sports business, football has its own business component, basketball, volleyball, tennis, like you said, even boxing, all of them. So what we are trying to do, and professional sports is more related to sports business. So what we are trying to do with this fund is target that area of our sports that can generate a lot of revenue. And we know that we have the capacity to deliver that. We have the market, we have the passion, we have the talent, and what we only need to do is complement what is currently on ground with this fund to ensure there's liquidity in the system and there's also stability for growth in the system.
Well, how will people, I mean, so this subscription is like an investment, right?
Yes, an investment for individuals, corporate organizations, private, public, everyone, both even Nigerians in diasporas, foreign investors, to invest in the fund. Because Nigerian sports market is a huge market in terms of population. We have a very strong youth, we have a very large youth population in this country. Apart from that youth population, Nigeria has a lot of talents that are gifted sports-wise. And if you look at the last Olympics, you discover that athletes of Nigerian descent that represented other countries
won even more medals than the one won by Nigeria. That is just to tell you the capacity we have home. And what is required is for us to improve our infrastructure, create a good incentive environment to actually motivate them to give up their best, and to ensure there's some reasonable stability, there's some reasonable liquidity and stability in the system to enable us retain our local talents. And you can see that even the music and the movie industry is already giving us a direction of what the sports sector can achieve. And all over the world, sports, business is bigger than music and movie all over the world. All the developed countries where even the movie and the music industry is thriving so much, the sports component of the entertainment industry is always far bigger in revenue, in turnover, in size, or whatever parameters you want to use in assessing it. And Nigeria already has that capacity to do it, because we're already kind of servicing foreign sports leagues. With the kind, if you look at it, you see the subscription we pay, you see the demand and the passion that goes along with it.
We're not kind of, we are.
So you see, so what we are saying is, it is now time for us to look inwards and bring those investments inwards and develop our local sports. Okay. And if you recall, the only time the Nigerian team, National Super Eagles, was very strong, many of those players were developed locally. And our league was so strong that it was not also very easy for even the foreign base to have a stroll into the team. And if you look at many of them then, most of them migrated from here into the first teams abroad, right from the Nigerian league. They had a first place, team place in those teams, and they won quite a lot of laurels even at that level. So meaning that even before they actually left the shores of Nigeria, they were already at par in terms of performance and quality, in line with what was obtainable at the international level.
Mr. Karim, pardon my ignorance. You say that this thing is an investment.
Correct.
So how exactly are you going to manage it such that it will yield returns to the investor?
Okay, thank you very much.
And not have political misinterpretation.
Ziggy-zaga.
Okay. First and foremost, the fund is into two sides. The infrastructural side and the human development side of it. In terms of management, we have other stakeholders. We have the trustees, we have the custodian, we have the registrar. Then, above all, the fund itself has its own coverage, which is going to be investing in sports assets, basically. And at least over 70% of that will go into sports assets, while the remaining one will be in the fixed income. In terms of mingling it with political, there's nothing like that. And that is why it becomes a fund that has a committee to manage it, which involves the trustees, the custodian, the registrar as well. We equally have accountants to the fund. So the fund is going to is a standalone on its own, and there's no any external interference.
Any conversations or handshake with the NFF?
Yes, the fund is endorsed by the Nigerian Football Federation, and we've also had a lot of consultations with those in the public sector currently managing our sports, and they're all quite excited about this fund because the way the fund is structured and the way it's going to be managed with a lot of good corporate governance structures in place, a lot of financial disciplines and due diligence that is expected to be applied in the deployment of these funds and even raising of the funds. And moreover, let me also emphasize that this fund is regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So it is a fund that is properly regulated that actually will be deployed to achieve the set objectives of the fund without undue interference from the kind of probably the kind of fears people have.
When does it open?
It's already launched and open to the public. So you can always go to the website, the Nigerian Football Fund website, tnff.gti.com.ng.
Okay.
One moment, please.
So the website again, and please slow down.
TNFF.
tnff.gti.com.ng.
Once you access the website, you can get all information, download the subscription form, fill the form, and submit. Alternatively, you can call us on our telephone numbers 090-8299 090-8299-9291. Or you can visit us at our office, number 4, Tinumbu Street on Lagos Island. So, but once you get to the website, once you access the website, you get a whole lot of information from the website.
Okay, I'll just give you the site once again, tnff.gti.com.ng, tnf.gti.com.ng. But should you decide to reach them via telephone, the number on which you can reach them is 0908 299 9291.
Okay, that's the website.
0908 299 9291.
So that's the website on the screen now.
Yes.
Start investing now. Okay, tell us about this football economy, Mr. Karim.
Okay. A football economy consists of football and the other sporting activities. Measurable statistical term, and which will go into, which is measurable in statistical term and can be measured as a component of the GDP. So the football economy implies that you are looking at all those sporting activities, like we have mentioned, football, other sports like volleyball, basketball, table tennis, lawn tennis, all of them coming together. So they form the football economy. And there are values there, which means that if you go outside the shore of this country, you see a lot of, especially in Europe, America, the sporting industry contribute a lot into the GDP, and they raise a lot of money from there. So which we can replicate same here, and that is the essence of having the TNFF, bringing the TNFF on board to ensure that we develop the economy better.
Mr. Karim, how is this going to help the young boy, for instance, who lives in Mushi, who is dreaming of becoming a Kano Anko tomorrow?
Okay, thank you. That's one will come under, when I spoke about human capital development, it will surely come under the talent hunt scheme, where we go to the grassroots, partner with the stakeholders there, then discover all these talents, bring them on board, and if which as time they progress, they migrate from one local club to another through that career progression to the next stage, and they come to the international limelight. Then in terms of infrastructure development, because that is going to come along with it, so to ensure that they are able to meet up with that to that sellable point in quote, where when they are discovered, then people can actually come for them, buy their talent, export those talents abroad.
I'm still on that football economy thing.
Yes.
Perhaps you may want to speak more on the value chain effects across the other sectors that will generate return on investment.
Okay, fine. On the football economy, again, one of the things I should also add to what he has said is that the fund is also focusing on, by extension, to the music and movie industry to also provide some kind of support there to grow the economy. And our target is to ensure that this football economy contributes significantly to the gross domestic product, just like is expected, just like you have in other developed countries, where the sports economy contributes about 1 to 2%, sometimes 3% to the gross domestic product. And we expect that that with this, when the football economy is very vibrant, given the fact that funding is very important in all these things we have been discussing, without funding, you can't really achieve all these objectives. So once the football economy is very vibrant, it is going to have a spillover effect on other sectors of the economy,
Such as?
tourism, merchandising, even transportation, the aviation industry and other transportation value chain. In fact, all sectors of the economy is going to create a lot of jobs for even a lot of the youths. We are talking of youth restiveness in the country now. One way to engage all these youths is to actively engage them with sports. I think I saw a documentary earlier when this program started on Delta State, and we saw what sports had been able to impact in the life of all those young athletes. But also, this fund is also going to be a complement to all the existing sport activities we have now. But I'll tell you the truth. To focus on the sports business aspect of it, it requires a lot of funding in terms of improving the existing infrastructures we have, in terms of providing the appropriate technology to drive all these activities, and in terms of a lot of training in the development of the human capital that is involved. If you find that the sports industry is not only about the talent, the human capital also dovetails to the technical officials, the coaching crew, and all the technical people.
You know, there are so many
that
other
are
questions that I would have loved to ask. When do I start getting return on my investment? Don't answer that question yet. And so many other questions.
Please let him answer that question.
Will I get the answer on the website?
Yes. Yes. Now, you see, once you invest, it's an open-ended fund, meaning it's not limited to even the 5 billion we are raising now. We expect to raise hundreds of billions over time. But annually, based on the revenue generated, a percentage of those revenue is paid out to investors. That is one aspect of the returns on investment. There's also the other aspect that has to do with the growth. Sports properties grow over time. As it's growing, the value of the investment is also growing. But in addition to those two, which are the quantitative benefits, the qualitative benefits of this fund is even far bigger in terms of the socio-economic impact of this fund to the sports ecosystem and to the society at large. Even your station is also going to benefit from this fund.
I like that part.
I think that my partner is going to invest.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson Ine, Executive Director, GTI Asset Management and Trust Limited, as well as Mr. Tunji Karim, Fund Manager, GTI Asset Management. Thank you very much for coming to tell us about the Football Trust Fund, which incidentally is not going to deal with only football. It's just a name. That is the name of the fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And we wish you all the best. You are so certain that you're going to be raising more than 5 billion. So let us know as you go along then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation. Please join us shortly.
See, if you believe it, say amen. No, amen. Amen. Everything you put your hand go up. Your name go open doors. You self go be a boss. Amen. Amen. Everything you put your hand go up. Your name go open doors. You self go be a boss. Amen. Amen.
Thank you for staying with us. Rebuilding livelihoods in Borno is what we are talking about now. Described as one of the luckiest states in the country due to the leadership it has had in the past 11 years, plus the vice president. Borno State in the northeast of Nigeria has witnessed violent activities of Boko Haram and armed conflict since 2009. It has also seen 8 years, well, it's been 8 years since the abduction of 276 Chibok schoolgirls by Boko Haram, and so many other things have happened since then. What are we doing about rebuilding livelihoods in the state? We have with us spokesperson to Borno State Governor Issa Gusau, who join us from our Abuja studio. Thank you for joining us this morning.
It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. First of all, how far so far? There are those who will be asking. 8 years after, unfortunately, a number of the children are still in captivity, and so many other things. Exactly How has the state government been handling that, as well as several other such situations that they've had to contend with?
I will just build on what you said earlier. In your introduction, you did say that Borno is one of the luckiest states because it has had a very good leadership, since 2011 under Senator Kashim Shettima. Governor Zulum was a commissioner, at that time. He was the commissioner for reconstruction, rehabilitation, and resettlement. He knew all the problems. So Borno is indeed lucky to have him at this time. So he moved aggressively because he was already familiar with the entire terrain. As we speak, the governor is in Monguno. He's been in Monguno since Thursday. He was working up till 2 a.m. last night, working with IDPs. He supervised the distribution of about 300 million to about 90,000 IDPs. He was at the hospital around midnight. He announced an increase of 30% salary for doctors in about 6 local government areas that are considered very tough: Monguno, Ngala, Dikwa, Kala Balge, and 2 or 3 other local government areas. So the governor is doing a lot. Within the last 2.5 years, the governor has provided the rebuilding of about 10,000 houses in Borno. A lot of them are new, some are being rebuilt. I can't count the number of hospitals that have been rebuilt and new primary healthcare centers. But what is important is that there is a plan. You know that Borno has developed a 25-year development plan, courtesy of Governor Babagana Omar Zulu, and then within the 25 years, there is a 10-year strategic framework, for the first phase of the implementation. So most of what the governor is doing is within this plan. So part of the strategy is to rebuild, as many communities, as we can have. So far, about 22 communities have been resettled, within the states. I would say that there is great deal of hope. So a lot of the communities are back, and you know that the governor hardly spends a week in Maiduguri. He would always tell you that the problems of Borno do not lie in Maiduguri. They lie in the local government areas outside the state. That is why Zulum would never spend up to a week in Maiduguri. He hardly stays more than 2 days in Abuja. When he comes to Abuja, as if he's itching, to go back. He is always in local government areas to address the problem, to build resilience. Because one of the things that Boko Haram was doing, if you remember, around 2004, I remember there was a time, 2014, there was a time the military brought some young men to the government house. One of those boys confessed that he was being paid 5,000 naira to set schools ablaze. Another one confessed that he was being given 5,000 naira to spy on soldiers. We have had women who were given as low as 10,000 naira to smuggle weapons. So what the governor is doing is to decrease that by empowering, the people, because there is abject poverty. So the governor goes around giving these 10, 15, 20,000, 100,000, sometimes even 200,000 naira to rebuild, microeconomics so that people can become empowered. And that has denied Boko Haram the opportunity of being able to incentivize people, with small cash. Now, it's very difficult for them to recruit people from the population using small incentives of 5,000, 10,000 naira that they used to do in the past. So I would say there's a great deal of hope across Borno State.
Is that any way connected with the multi-sectoral crisis recovery project?
Yes, it is. Boko Haram is a crisis that you don't approach, from one angle. The governor is deploying different approaches. There is the humanitarian angle, which I mentioned. There is the rebuilding of communities, rebuilding of schools. There is the restoration of livelihoods. The governor is investing heavily in agriculture. A lot of people are now going back to farm. If you look at Borno, the number of farming activities, the level of farming activities that we have witnessed last year, is far more than what we witnessed within the last 10 years. And God willing, this year, we are likely to triple that. Because there is I would say, peace is really reimagined, across the state. And one of the benefits, one of the things resulting into that is the mass surrender of a lot of Boko Haram members. You know that more than 35,000 members of the Boko Haram have surrendered. And like I'm sure you may have read in the media, the governor is largely responsible for that. But I would say that the military has done a lot. The governor built on what he met. But I would say that the governor's credibility has really worked. Because as soon as Shekau died, there was a meeting the governor called with security men, and he said, look, with the death of Shekau, we have an opportunity to break within the ranks of Boko Haram by appealing to them. And then as soon as the governor began to announce that, look, whoever comes around, the person, could be assured of government's, support. A lot of them believe that Zulum is not somebody that speaks from both sides of his mouth. Everybody that has worked with Zulum, anyone will tell you, one of the things people will tell you about Zulum, they would say that he's stubborn, in quotes. Because the moment Zulum says something, he hardly goes back on his words. So his credibility has done a lot in attracting, in assuring a lot of these insurgents. And that's why, if you would observe, that you haven't been hearing of attacks on communities or incidences of bombs between here and Burma, between here. So largely, a lot of these areas are now being cultivated by a lot of farmers. So we hope to see a bumper harvest, this year. I would say that, so far so good. Of course, we are not where we are. There are still pockets of challenges. There are instances of abductions, particularly by the ISWAP component of the Boko Haram. But I would say that even within the ISWAP, we are beginning to break them. We are beginning to have some commanders of the ISWAP also surrendering, to what we call the Borno model, in dealing with the Boko Haram. So our major problem now, which is also being handled, is what do you do with this mass surrender of insurgents? You have about 35,000 or more of them, and they keep coming out. But the governor is responding to it. He has met the president. The president has shown a lot of commitment. You would recall that the president has set up a presidential committee that is headed by the vice president. The governor is the vice chairman of that committee. The committee has federal officials from virtually all the institutions that are related to humanitarian issues. And one of the issues they will be dealing with is what to do, with this surrender. But I would assure that of all these people that have surrendered, none of them that is considered a threat has been released, to the public, because there's a serious profiling going on by the DSS, by the military, by different levels of the military. They do a lot of profiling, so they categorize them. There are those that are considered low risk. There are those that are not even risky. There are some of them who were enslaved. There are farmers that were enslaved by the Boko Haram to farm for them. But of course, you still consider them as people who were working with them. So a lot of these things, they are categorized, in stages. But so far, none of them that could be considered a risky person has been reintegrated into the society.
Okay. Mr. Kuso, we understand that there's a partnership between the state and the Society of Engineers to construct houses for the, once displaced persons. Are there still any displaced persons?
Yes, there are displaced persons. There are displaced persons because we are talking about, at the beginning of the crisis, we had more than 2 million people displaced. You can hardly provide, housing for the whole of these people, within the time frame that you'd want. The governor is going aggressively. Like I said, more than 10,000 houses have been rebuilt through different partnerships. There is a company that is into homes. I can't remember the name of the company. Is in Abuja. I think about 2,000 or so houses were built through that partnership. There are a lot that have been built by the state government. There are also interventions, by President Muhammadu Buhari. He did approve about 10,000 houses, out of which about 4,000 to 6,000 have already been built. So it's a concerted effort, by all stakeholders. But like I said, there are still challenges. Like I said, the governor is currently in Monguno. The people that he went to see are basically IDPs. So it's a clear indication that we still have IDPs. We're talking about 2 million people. Providing houses for that. If you were to look at the Recovery and Peace Building Assessment Report that was authored jointly by the World Bank, the European Union, the Nigerian government, and and the states of the Northeast, more than about 1 million houses were destroyed in Borno. You can building 1 million houses is a great deal of work. Under the Shetima administration, about 30,000 houses were were built. While Zulum was he spearheaded that under Shatima. Shatima gave him a lot of funds, a lot of independence, to do a lot. About 30,000 houses were built. Now, within the last 2.5 years of the Zulum administration, more than 10,000 new houses have been built. I don't know. I can't tell you the number of existing houses that were rebuilt. Probably they are as much as 10,000, but I'm not sure of the exact figure. But if you're talking about destruction of more than 1 million houses, and if you're to combine the houses that were rebuilt under Shatima and under Zulum, probably you arrive at 50,000. So we would say that there's still a long way to go. But the important thing is that Borno has a leader that is visionary, somebody that is extremely dedicated, that is practically on ground, that goes all around. Every amount of money that comes to Borno is always put to judicious use, under the Zulum administration. So I believe that we are optimistic that by the special grace of God, we'll get to where the governor wants us to go.
Let me ask you very quickly. We spoke about the multi-sectoral crisis recovery project the other time, which we understand is a $200 million International Development Fund Association operation. Tell us some of the results that has been achieved between 2017 and 2020 in particular.
The MCRP is a component of the World Bank, and of course, as you know, Nigeria is a member of the World Bank. Nigeria contributes, to the World Bank. So whatever comes from the World Bank to any of the crisis states is more or less like the allocation that is going to states, because whatever fund the Nigerian government gives to the World Bank is also part of the funds that belongs, to the entire state. But to be honest with you, I am not in position to give you the exact operations of the MCRP. If you want, I can get the coordinator of the MCRP maybe to come to appear in one of your programs, so that I don't mix up things. But I know that the rebuilding of Borno is being done through all kinds of collaborative efforts. The state government is of course taking the lead, because the problems of Borno are principally, our problems. So the state government, I would say, does 50 to 60%, of all the interventions that you have. And then we have a lot of support coming from, like you said, from the World Bank, from the UN, especially on humanitarian crises. We have had support from Aliko Dangote. We have all kinds of support from people. But when you are dealing with a crisis, you are dealing with a situation where some people cannot engage in businesses. Some people cannot engage in farming activities. They rely on food aid. That's a lot. No matter what you pump in, giving people 3 square meals, they are sitting down, and it's not because it's their fault. I mean, it's a very serious deal. So I would say that whatever that comes to Borno, I would say is far, far less than what Borno needs. If you're going back to the Recovery and Peace Building Assessment Report, the destructions inflicted by the Boko Haram across the northeast was put at about $9 billion. About that, I'm not too sure. But Borno alone accounts for almost $6 billion. That's a hell of money. If you are to multiply $6 billion by the exchange rate of over 500,000 naira, it's the amount of money that is required to rebuild Borno. It is unimaginable. I would say that Borno needs about 5 trillion, if not more, to rebuild. But then, if you are, like the governor would tell you, that if you are to sit down and be thinking about all of that, we will move forward. So he feels that it's better, whatever it is that we have, let's begin to do something. And I would say he has gone beyond doing something. He's doing a lot, across the state.
Okay, in all of this, how effective has the Northeast Development Commission been?
The NEDC has been quite effective. They are being helpful. You know, Governor Zulum, everybody knows him, he's a very honest person. He's someone that would always acknowledge whatever support that comes from places. I know a number of times he visits some local government areas. Whenever there is a food intervention by the NEDC, the governor announces it, and I've heard him say it a number of times. It means that the NEDC has been supporting the state government, you know, with a lot of food items that are being distributed, you know, to IDPs. And then there's also support coming from the Nigerian customs. You remember that the president did give a directive, you know, some years back, saying that whatever food that was seized, you know, from smugglers should be channeled in support of displaced persons across the country. So a lot of that has come. And I know that the NEDC has also built a number of houses for resettlement of IDPs in some part of the state. I don't know the exact number of houses, but they have actually made some interventions. And the interventions, like, you know, are continuing. And but most importantly, I know that the NEDC, I'm not their spokesman, you know, by the way, but I know that the NEDC has developed a roadmap for interventions across the Northeast. And I know that they have held some public hearings, they have had interactive sessions with people from with key stakeholders in all the states across the Northeast. In Borno in particular, I know that they had a very robust interactive session, and then they wanted to get inputs from key stakeholders as to what the stakeholders consider priorities, so that they don't start working at different arms. But I think the most important thing I would want to add is that whatever support that you see coming to Borno is actually inspired by the leadership of Governor Babagana Umar Zulum. The mere fact that everybody knows that this is the governor who puts in everything, who goes about everywhere, who spends the whole night. Everybody wants to come and do something because you want to identify with somebody who is extremely dedicated to his people, and you're sure that whatever intervention that you bring to Borno, because most of the time Zulum will tell you, I don't want cash. You want to give support, you say, no, don't give me money. Give us food or give us building building materials. That's the kind of man that he is, and I would say that a lot that is coming to Borno has to do with the kind of leadership that Borno has under Professor Umar Zulum as governor.
Okay. Are farmers now able to go back to their farms, because that was a big issue some time ago?
In June, on 17th of June last year, President Muhammad Buhari was in Borno, and one of the things Governor Zulum requested was for him to direct the Nigerian military to increase access to farmlands, safe access to farmlands. And of course, you know that when the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense launched a program of agro rangers, like the Commandant General of the NCDC publicly announced, Borno was the first to adopt that program. Governor Zulum in 2019 set up the agro rangers, the Borno component of the agro rangers, and equipped them. So they have been securing farmlands for farmers, to come and, cultivate crops. And then when the president came to crap it up, the governor made a public request to the president, and then President Buhari gave a directive that the military should increase access to the farmland. So that was done, and that enhanced the level of farming activities that we witnessed last year. And like I said earlier, the mass surrender of Boko Haram, particularly within the Maiduguri, Bama, Banki axis, and some part of the state, has largely increased access of farmers to farmlands. So I would tell you that, I don't know the percentage, but I would say that about maybe 30 to 40% of farmers in Borno are able to access farmlands now. And we hope to see, by the special grace of God, a bumper harvest. And more than that, Zulum has been going to these farming communities. He set up a committee that we have what we call a mega farm project under the leadership of a farmer. The governor ensures that farmers are provided with whatever they need. In Damasak, for instance, you must have, the channels did report a number of times where the governor was in different local government areas launching all kinds of farming interventions, providing water pumps, providing fertilizer, providing cash backings, to different categories of farmers. So I would say that by the special grace of God, we are seeing, there's a lot of improvement in terms of agricultural activities this year, and we hope to see a bumper harvest by the special grace of God.
At the end of the day, Mr. Gusso, whatever you know, infrastructure development, whatever things government is doing, it's about the people. And just as you said, my colleague asked a question that you responded to about the people who are, whether they are still in IDPs or not. At the end of the day, it's about their lives. So can you speak to us about the kind of psychosocial support that some of these people have gotten to help them resettle back into their lives?
Okay, I'll start by acknowledging the role of INGOs. You know that we have the IOM, the UNICEF. They have been doing a lot in terms of psychosocial support, giving psychosocial support to IDPs. And of course, the Borno State Ministry of Health has been taking the lead, in giving a direction to that. But they have done a lot in most of these camps. There is no camp you go to in Borno where you don't have a structure that deals with psychosocial support. And I know that the federal government has actually also been supporting the University of Medical Teaching Hospital does have a trauma center. I also know that a lot has been going on, but I will tell you that there is no bigger psychosocial support like when citizens see their own governor coming to be with them day and night. I can't count the number of times Zulum has visited any of the 27 local government areas in Borno. Like Kalabalge, which is the remotest local government area in the whole of Nigeria, Zulum has been to Kalabalge close to 10 times within the last 2 years. He has been to Mongono maybe more than 15 times. He has been to virtually every local government area countless number of times, and whenever he goes, he stays with these IDPs, he's always around them, he gets directly involved in giving them food aid, he's always relating with them. I don't think there is a bigger support, like that. So he inspires everybody. He meets them, he supports them, he tries to, to fight that problem of wants. Problem of lack that is inherent in everyone because of the peculiarity of the problem. He is creating livelihoods. He's giving a lot of support to people, giving them houses. I think that is a major support. Of course, but we know that no amount of cash, no amount of food can replace the death of a loved one. So, like I said, the INGOs are doing a lot. The Borno State Ministry of Health is also doing a lot on that. And then most importantly, there is a program going on in terms of giving support to widows, because we have more than 50,000 widows whose husbands have died as a result of the Boko Haram crisis. We have more than 50,000 orphans, children whose parents have been killed. And most of the schools that you keep hearing the state government building under the Zulum administration, more than 20 mega schools have been built. More than 30 existing schools have been rebuilt, have been, rehabilitated. A lot of these are aimed at supporting, orphans. So, it's a very traumatic situation, but the governor is really, really inspiring, confidence in citizens.
One of the figures available to us is that from Borno State, and as a result of the MCRP, psychosocial support services have reached 13,500 households over time. And that question, of course, is asked advisedly. Would you be able to tell us certain specific, situations that are specific to people who have suffered from these things? Maybe as a result of they developed this kind of behavioral pattern, or these are the kind of things, since, as you said, the governor has been going from place to place. What are the peculiar challenges that people in that environment have that maybe government has been able to intervene or government is working at right now?
Okay, part of the major problems is, one, being displaced. The mere fact that you are homeless, there is no bigger challenge than that, living in the IDP camp without a home. And like I said, more than 10,000 houses have been built. Look, even last week, you reported that the governor was in Goza. He went to commission about 340 houses for a community a town that is called Warabe. A lot of them, were resettled there. And then he gave some money to about 300 families also for them to rebuild, their houses, because some of the destructions there were things that they could handle themselves. And it's another way of also rebuilding the economy of the state, because whatever amount that you give them, they would end up buying whatever building materials that they want, from the community. So he gave some amount, he approved some amount of money for about 300 in Goza, and then a lot of these rebuildings are going on. So the governor, like I said, the focus is on providing homes to people, because that is the first thing. And then a lot of these communities that are being rebuilt, they are built with schools, with water facilities, or with healthcare facilities. These are really, really important. And like I said earlier, the governor, while he's in Mongono, at the moment, he approved, increase of salaries for medical doctors operating in 6 local government areas. Now, the whole of that is to increase access to public health services, for displaced persons. The truth of the matter is that IDPs are facing a lot. You are dealing with people who have lost loved ones. You are dealing with children who have lost parents, who are not accompanied. Some people do not even know where their relations are. So it's a great deal. It's a lot to deal with. But I think what the governor is doing, the first step is to provide homes, and for them to know that they are not alone, for them to be seeing the governor, for him to be inspiring them, for him to continually provide them with livelihoods, for them to earn means of living, to give hope, to the widows, to give hope to the orphans. That is because it's a war situation. That is the problem of war. War comes with a lot of impacts. So the impacts are huge, but like I said, Borno has a governor that is visionary, that is very determined, that is very committed, that is practically on ground, and that is providing results.
Just a quick one before we go. How soon can you project that we are likely to get to a state of near normal to what we had before all of this problem started? Any projection by the state government?
I wouldn't want to project, but I would say we are hoping. We are hoping that we get peace, as soon as is possible. But I would say that the hope is enhanced by, like I said, the mass surrender of Boko Haram members. Look, we've been praying over the years. The governor has been injecting a lot of funds in terms of supporting the military, in terms of equipping volunteers. You know that when he came on board, within the first 1 week, he increased the salaries of volunteers. He has approved the deployment of a lot of them. He has released close to 700 to 800,000. He has released close to 3,000 vehicles, to the military, and volunteers. So he's doing a whole lot. But at the moment, we believe that the mass surrender of Boko Haram will do a lot of magic. And that's why the governor keeps saying that this is something, it's an opportunity that we have gotten, that we must take full advantage of it, to make use of it. We are very hopeful that by the special grace of God, the peace that Borno is witnessing will continue to grow. And we are seeing signs that the peace is actually growing, because within the last 1 year, the peace has been growing. We haven't had major incidences, and we pray that we will not have them. Of course, the security, the military is doing a lot. They are doing a lot. The governor keeps commending them. The president has shown a lot of commitment, particularly in Borno State. The service chiefs are doing a lot. So we are very optimistic that by the special grace of God, the peace we are witnessing in Borno will continue to grow.
Okay.
Amen.
We have to thank you very much for all that you have told us, all the illumination you've thrown on efforts at rebuilding livelihoods in Borno. Issa Gusau, spokesman to Borno State Governor, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so Sunrise returns with the home stretch. When we return, please stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us thus far. Well, we have our artists of the week.
Do you sing? I'm not talking about the bathroom. When you sing,
Yes, I sang in school.
Okay. I'm just asking.
But I was not a soprano.
What were you?
Alto. We were the ones who sang down there.
Well, at least
But you know, the mixture then brings out something that is so pleasing to the ears. And one of the reasons why I actually go to church on Sundays to listen to hymns. I love hymns.
So you don't sing anymore? You don't have adult choir?
Adult choir. Oh, God. Our guest this morning is Nkiruka Ogboruche, but you all know her as NK. It's my pleasure to welcome NK this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Were you the one singing that video? She's now sitting very gently now,
like a good girl.
I'm happy she said it herself. Like.
Now, before we came on air, I was reading something to NK, and I said to her, NK, you are a vocalist with a high-pitched soprano that transcends 3 octaves. What does that mean?
Okay, so like
will your voice shatter a glass?
I haven't had that experience before.
Try it and let us know the result.
Okay, I will definitely do that.
No, not here.
not today. But what it means basically is that, so an octave is from eight notes, from do to do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do on one key, then you move to the next one and do the same thing, and then move to the third one. Some people max out on the second or even on the first, but I'm able to go to the third, yes.
So to the ordinary man, they can describe your voice as shrill? Well, shrill in a positive way.
Yes, it can get to that. But with vocal training, you're able to also sing deep and also take it to the extent, the highest extent it can get to, if need be. So you just know how to work the vocal cords to bring out the kind of sound that you need per time.
Talking about vocal cords, how do you train them? How do you exercise them? How do you build them?
So there are a number of things that one can do to actually, train and build vocal cords, vocal exercises that you can do. Things like lip thrill, breath exercise, because singing is breathing. You use your breathing. It's a breathing technique with your air in your diaphragm and producing it and all of that. So you learn how to work all of the things that are necessary to help produce sound. Then there are some measures to take, things to avoid, things to eat, and all of that to just keep the vocals.
What aren't you allowed to eat?
Things you're not allowed to eat. Okay, for me it varies from person to person. Okay. But I notice that when I do a lot of nuts, especially close to a time I'm supposed to be singing, it kind of like affects the quality.
Good. So.
But when I do lots of water and I have a lot of rest and do honey and ginger mixture, it kind of helps the vocals.
There goes my honey.
There's the secret. There's the secret if you want to sing as high as she does.
Yeah, I'm happy at least she doesn't take nuts, so I will save nuts. If we were here now, I'm sure I'll have more.
You'll have all of it.
Yes,
all of my nuts.
I'm going to ask a funny question. Did you cry a lot when you were a baby? Because that will explain how you're able to move from, what is that thing again?
One octave to
One
another.
octave to the third octave. You cry, baby?
Well...
Okay, that answers the question.
Crying doesn't really have anything to do with it, though, but...
So they
can say like I'm more of an emotional person,
See?
I'm in tune with my emotional
That explains it. Okay. There's something you also said, about before we came on air about family support.
Yes.
For what you're doing.
Yes.
Tell us a little about that. How did that start for you?
Yeah, so I have very fond memories of my father and how he kind of like consciously, because at the time I don't think he knew that any of us would love music or be drawn to music, but he kind of like set the foundation for us. I remember vividly a day, then when we had this, there was this small cassette player, the one that has the red button at the end for record. So we had the cassette in it, and he was like, oh, let's do a fun activity. We're going to record something. So he gathered myself and my siblings, who were about 5, I have 4 siblings and I'm the first. So we put music together. We said, okay, we'll do a song in English, Igbo, Yoruba, and Hausa. And then after rehearsing, he said we're going to record it and play back and hear ourselves, yeah? So he said we're going to use like a bottle and a spoon for an instrument to kind of give timing. So go, 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 like that. And then we hit record and we sang through what we rehearsed and played back. And it was so fascinating for me. I was like, wow, this is good. And that kind of like set the foundation for everything else.
What kind of songs did you sing that recording? Do you still have the recording, by the way? Because it's something for the museum.
I grew up in the north, so we had the Hausa song, the Yoruba song. I really can't remember all the songs, but a few of them I can remember till today.
Such as?
So the Hausa one went something like...
I knew you would remember that one.
Yesu ya fada inana chikinku ubamu ya nache inana chikinku salam aleikum inana chikinku, and we're so excited to play back.
What does that mean in simple English?
Okay, it means Yesu ya fada, that's Jesus our Father is saying, my peace be unto you, I am with you always, basically.
Wow. Well, you are a member of Tehillah Crew.
Yes.
The gospel singing group. And you're managed by your husband.
Yes, I am.
Now, which came first?
So we
the
have...
management or the love affair?
The marriage came first.
Okay, and then, but you were singing all the while, right?
Yes, but not as an artist.
Okay.
I was just very fine with just singing in the choir, in church.
Let's be clear. My director wants to know, which one came first, the management or the marriagement?
The marriagement came before the management.
Now you
the
hear
management
came before
the
management.
Yes,
okay.
He actually met me while I was singing in church on a random day. You know, that was where the
singing
initial...
in the choir does aid.
Yes.
What did it? Social
something.
Interaction.
Oh, interaction is the word. Okay.
Thank you. So, if you're kind of desperate, you can go join your church choir.
No, don't even be desperate to join. Just join.
You never can tell. Things might happen.
Especially if you can traverse 3 octaves. Okay.
Yes, that will help too. I'm agreeing with you.
I'm just wondering.
Because that voice will attract attention.
The same way your own voice attracted attention as a presenter on radio, TV. Okay, let's not talk about that one right now. You're not the guest. Okay, so NK, tell us about how this journey began for you. We know the daddy role.
Yeah.
But how did this whole project start for you?
So, like I said earlier, from my childhood, wherever I found myself, I became very interested in anything music. And naturally, what I gravitated to was choirs. So in school, in university, more especially, because that's where the expression became more vivid. So I was in choirs, and that's where I learned a lot of things about music and all that. And then after that, coming out into life, university, youth service and all, I continued in that light. And when I met my husband, married him, he also had a passion for music, but not as a singer per se, so more like giving support to people that are interested in singing, you know, so...
Music support services.
Something like that.
Again.
Yes, so Tehillah Records is the record label, you know, and under that platform we've been able to, through various programs and initiatives that we have, we've been able to like spotlight young upcoming artists, support them in the ways that we can through various platforms and things like that.
I must say that you're one of the few people who are doing music today who actually studied music. We've had many guests here. We've had lawyers. We've had economists.
Yeah.
And they study all those things and then they say, Mama, Papa,
take your paper.
Let me do music.
I've done it for you. Now I'm going to pursue my passion.
The one I like. Well, I didn't really study music like as a course in school. My knowledge of music and everything was learnt alongside studying my first degree, which was public administration. So I was a public administrator by day.
Okay.
And then walking through the learnings of music, you know, in my spare time, basically.
Okay, so I'll not say the challenges or the successes. What are the peculiar experiences you have had in this industry?
Peculiar experiences that I've had. At some point, it was, you know, acceptability. People accepting your music, your sound, and just, you know, giving it attention. You know, so you had to deal with that for a couple. And then also supports, collaborative support from peers, from other bodies and all of that. You had to like walk through some rough patches here and there. But I dare say these are things that are normal and should not dissuade anybody that is towing the same path, because somewhere along the line things will level up and you'll be fine.
Those challenges have rocked many who tried to get into the industry, especially when you are doing it for ministry.
Yeah.
How easy is it to stay afloat doing this, you know, doing music ministry, as opposed to just doing music?
Great question. For me, I would say what has helped me is, you know, having a source of income to support what you do. So it's always advisable, like I will always advise any music minister, your ministry needs, for it to have expression, it needs to be presented in a very good, excellent way, and you need money to do that. And because you are not earning from that per se at the time, you also need to find a way to fund it. So I think if you're able to have a handwork or a job or something that brings you some form of income, you can now use that to build whatever it is you want to present, your ministry, your music. Give it.
What is it that you were doing to support your music in the early days?
Oh, I had a 9-to-5. I had a 9-to-5 for 10 years, and then I started running my own business. I still run my own business right now.
Doing what?
I do quite a number of things. So I have an IT school. I have an IT school.
School?
Yes. I also rent and sell sound equipment and mobile phones and gadgets. I do.
Why is
all
it
of
not
that.
just NK Enterprises? You talked about acceptance earlier.
Yes.
What's the acceptance now compared to when and how it started?
I think the thing is, there's a big difference, you know. So everybody, not everybody, but most people now are accepting of the message that we have. So what I would just say is, what helped me is being comfortable in your self, understanding that you're unique and working in your uniqueness, not trying to be like anybody else. People would love you for who you are. There are people that you're called to. So be consistent in that thing that you're doing, and don't try. We look at somebody that's like, oh, I want to be like this person. Oh, tomorrow you change. People get confused. They don't know what they are following or what they, you know, what they are looking at. You know. Okay. So yeah.
Is this the Yes You Are song?
Oh, no. Yes, You Are the Lord was my very first single as a solo artist. So this is Mon Sobilier. It's my second release this year. The first one was Shawway. And this is Mon Sobilier. And these are songs that are gearing towards my third album.
Okay, and what's been the reception like?
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Shawway is like a praise song. I wish they would take that beautiful praise song that is totally different. The message is different. This one is kind of like a communion prayer song, something that draws you to the Lord in your quiet time. That's what this is for.
Interesting.
Your second album, The Bridge, was released in 2008.
Yes, it was.
And you had a live concert.
Yes, at a hotel.
Was it a sellout?
It was a sellout. And I think
we understand that people like Sonny Okposo were there. Chema Jesus was there.
Yes. Yes.
So when is the next concert?
This year. Hopefully we're putting plans in place to have something this year.
Christmas?
Somewhere around the third quarter, not Christmas.
Third quarter.
Yes.
Live or hybrid?
Live.
Live, okay.
Yes, it's going to be live.
So I'm going to pay to come. I'm just asking.
Because you're my friend, I may just...
I will take that request to the National Assembly.
So we wish you all the best.
Thank you
NK.
so much.
NK is signed by Tehila Records, by the way.
Yes.
And the label, of course, is headed by her husband, Tim, who is the CEO. Also signed to that label is Chika 100% and Tehila Crew. You are still in Tehila Crew, are you?
Yes, I am.
And you also sing as NK.
Yes, I do. It happens, you know. Some songs, some artists have songs, personal songs of themselves, and then, you know, when Tehila Crew meets, they have their own expression
You also
as well.
sing. Okay.
Yes.
It sounds like the new model now, right? Where you belong into a group and you can do solo.
You can say that, yes.
Interesting.
In every part of the world, it's a tenable approach.
No.
Yes.
It's okay.
All right, then, Kiruka Oboruche, otherwise known as NK. We wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
And I like that mole, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So Kiruka winds up sunrise for this day. The week of Easter. We'll bring you a fresh edition next. Oh, but I wanted to read a mail from somebody called Abim, a tweet from Abimbola before we close quickly. Abimbola says, I want to believe that people will give advice on this topic, which is the one about
Spousal abuse.
Spousal abuse. They give an advice on this topic that reflects what they would do in the same situation. Advising a person to stay in an abusive relationship is a tacit endorsement of the abuse. I wouldn't stay in such. I cannot advise anybody to stay in such.
Interesting thing about scripture is it is always, there is logos and then there is rema. How it reaches you, how the perspective that God shows you about that scripture, that is your own applicability.
And that is Sunrise for today. We'll bring you a fresh edition next week. I'm Alero Edu, wishing you a happy Easter indeed. See you next week.
Do have a happy Easter. I'm Ayo Makinde. Take care.